The automatic camera clicked steadily as Major Robert Cowboy Stout's F6F Hellcat swept across Peleliu at 8,000 feet on September 12, 1944. His mission was simple: photograph the northern airfield and return to the USS Hornet. Intelligence had confidently reported the field as abandoned, damaged from previous bombing runs. But when Stout glanced down, his blood froze. The airfield below teemed with life. Rows of Mitsubishi Zeros and Nakajima bombers packed wingtip to wingtip. Fuel drums sat stacked in orderly lines, while ground crews bustled between aircraft. This wasn't a derelict base, it was alive and ready. In seconds, Stout counted at least 40 planes, all armed and fueled. He knew exactly what they were preparing for. In 3 days, 28,000 Marines would storm Peleliu's beaches in one of the Pacific War's largest amphibious invasions. The fleet was already en route. These Japanese aircraft were poised to strike before the first wave even reached shore. His training dictated clear procedure: observe, radio coordinates, return, and await command's decision. A recon pilot wasn't meant to engage, especially not alone against an airfield dense with anti-aircraft fire. But Stout also understood how military chains of command worked. By the time he landed, filed reports, and a strike team was mobilized, it could be hours, or worse, a day. The Japanese would disperse, camouflage, or launch. The Marines heading for Peleliu couldn't afford bureaucratic delay. He climbed higher, studying the scene below. In their haste, the Japanese had made a critical error. The aircraft were parked too close, surrounded by exposed fuel. One well-placed burst could ignite a chain reaction. He checked his load: 6 50-caliber Browning machine guns, 2,400 rounds total, barely 12 seconds of continuous fire. Not enough to pick off every plane, but enough to light the fuse. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from? And had you ever heard of Cowboy Stout's attack at Peleliu? Drop a comment below. Stout was no reckless hotshot. At 28, he'd flown 63 combat missions, faced Zeros head-on, attacked fortified positions, and landed carriers in storm conditions that grounded others. He knew the razor-thin line separating bravery from suicide. What he now considered walked that edge. If he attacked, every gun on Peleliu would turn skyward. He'd have no wingmen to draw fire, no cover for escape. The Hellcat could take punishment, but one lucky shell to the engine or cockpit, and he'd crash into jungle with zero hope of rescue. If he didn't attack, those 40 planes would be airborne soon, diving on the invasion fleet, strafing landing craft, bombing transports, turning beaches into massacres. Stout had seen it before: Tarawa, where Japanese aircraft decimated the first waves. He'd watched helplessly as bombs tore through packed boats unable to maneuver. The choice came in under 30 seconds. Stout jammed the throttle forward, rolled the Hellcat over, and dove, altimeter spinning down like a clock to destiny. Rapidly, he dropped toward the jungle canopy, heart pounding in rhythm with the roaring engine. His plan was simple: come in low and fast, hit the fuel drums first, and escape before the anti-aircraft crews could react. At 2,000 feet, he leveled out and slammed the throttle fully forward. The Hellcat surged to nearly 400 mph, the massive engine howling at full power. The jungle rushed by in a green blur just 50 feet below his wings. Through a sudden break in the trees, the airfield appeared, bright, exposed, and alive. Japanese ground crews froze in disbelief as the Hellcat streaked overhead. Some scattered for cover, others simply stared upward. None reached their guns in time. Stout aligned the gun sight on the northern line of aircraft and squeezed the trigger. All 6 Browning 50-caliber machine guns erupted at once, their deafening roar overwhelming the engine's sound. Bright tracers stitched across the runway, punching through the thin aluminum fuselage of a Zero. The fighter bucked as its tanks burst open, spraying vaporized fuel. Stout nudged the stick and shifted his aim toward a stack of fuel drums nestled between two bombers. His rounds tore through them. Then came the fireball. The drums exploded in a violent flash, engulfing both bombers in a wall of flame. The blast was far greater than Stout expected. The shock wave rattled his Hellcat as he yanked the stick back to climb. Below him, chaos unfolded. Fire leapt skyward, spreading in seconds from one aircraft to the next. The first Zero ignited another, then another, each explosion feeding a growing inferno. Half the northern row vanished in a chain of rolling detonations. Japanese crews fled in panic, abandoning any hope of saving the field. Anti-aircraft gunners finally reached their posts and opened fire, but Stout was already darting upward in a twisting climb, zigzagging to spoil their aim. Bright tracers streaked past his canopy, some slamming into his tail. The Hellcat shuddered violently as 20mm shells tore through the fuselage. Warning lights flickered red across his instrument panel, but the engine held strong. Banking sharply, Stout looked down. The devastation was staggering. Nearly 20 planes burned, thick black smoke pouring into the sky, visible for miles. But he spotted more. 20 untouched aircraft on the southern end, waiting to launch. He checked his remaining ammunition. Half gone, about 6 seconds of fire left. The gunners were ready now, tracking his every move. A second attack was suicide. Still, he rolled the plane inverted and dove again. The response was instant. Anti-aircraft fire lanced upward like lightning, the air filled with tracers. Stout jinked left and right, never flying straight long enough for them to lead his path. The Hellcat rattled under fresh hits. Something tore loose in the fuselage, but he held steady, diving from a new angle toward the southern bombers. His remaining rounds tore through their wings, rupturing tanks and setting fires. He swept the guns across a nearby fuel truck. It exploded with a thunderous blast, flipping a bomber upside down. Secondary detonations followed as fuel ignited nearby ammunition crates, each explosion cascading into the next. The bombers' own bombs cooked off, ripping them apart in spectacular bursts. The southern line now burned just as fiercely as the northern. Then silence, his guns empty, ammo spent. The Hellcat groaned as he pulled up, its damaged controls sluggish, smoke trailing behind. Warning lights glowed across the dash. Something critical was leaking, but Stout stayed on the stick, determined to fly that crippled fighter home. Below him, the entire airfield burned like the mouth of a volcano. Every plane, every fuel drum, every shack was swallowed in fire. The black smoke towered thousands of feet high, a dark pillar marking destruction. Stout eased the crippled Hellcat toward the open sea, coaxing the damaged machine to stay aloft. The hydraulics were nearly gone, the controls heavy and sluggish. Oil pressure flickered dangerously low. He wasn't sure the landing gear would even come down, but the engine still held steady, its rhythm the only thing between him and the ocean. The return flight felt endless. The adrenaline that had fueled his attack drained away, replaced by a cold awareness of what he had done. He had violated direct orders. Instead of photographing the target and returning, he had attacked it, alone. A court-martial seemed almost certain. He could already picture the lineup of furious officers waiting for explanations. Yet, as he thought of the invasion fleet steaming toward Peleliu, of the thousands of Marines who would now live to reach the beach, he knew he'd made the only choice that mattered. Soon, the USS Hornet appeared on the horizon, her deck glinting faintly in the afternoon sun. Stout radioed in, his voice steady despite the damage report. Aircraft heavily hit. Landing gear uncertain. Request priority landing. The carrier immediately turned into the wind, clearing the deck for his arrival. As he approached, the landing gear extended, but one wheel refused to lock. He came in fast, slammed down hard, and caught the second arresting wire. The jolt shook the deck, metal groaning under the impact. The Hellcat skidded, smoking, before coming to rest. Crewmen rushed in, stunned by what they saw. The tail was shredded, riddled with holes. The fuselage looked like it had been chewed apart by shrapnel. The paint was scorched black from fire and fuel blasts. Stout climbed out slowly, his flight suit streaked with smoke and oil. A crowd of officers was already waiting, the air boss demanding to know why a recon pilot had returned with battle damage, the squadron commander furious about broken radio silence, and the intelligence officer simply asking, "What the hell happened over Peleliu?" Stout's answer was short and steady. The airfield wasn't abandoned. It was full of enemy planes preparing to strike the fleet. I destroyed them. All 40. The room fell silent. The intelligence officer blinked. 40 aircraft? One pilot? It sounded impossible. But the next day's reconnaissance photos proved him right. The northern airfield at Peleliu was a graveyard. Burned-out wrecks scattered across blackened concrete. Exactly 40 destroyed aircraft. The fuel stores were gone, the hangars flattened, and Japanese air operations on the island wiped out. When the Marines landed on September 15, 1944, they did so under clear skies. No strafing runs, no bombers. Complete air superiority. Stout's defiance had changed the battle before it began. For his actions, the Navy awarded him the Navy Cross, the second highest honor for valor. The citation commended his extraordinary heroism and aggressive fighting spirit in attacking overwhelming enemy forces alone. The battle that followed was still hell. The Marines faced fortified ridges and caves that turned every advance into a bloodbath. Peleliu would drag on for over 2 months and claim nearly 2,000 American lives. But without Major Robert "Cowboy" Stout's daring decision that day, those losses could have doubled. His one-man assault had destroyed the skies over Peleliu before the battle had even begun. Craft and transport ships. Air assaults were always disastrous because the troops had nowhere to hide and no way to maneuver. Later, military historians estimated that Stout's single daring attack probably saved between 500 and 1,000 Marine lives on the first day alone. In just 8 minutes of combat, he achieved what might have taken an entire bomber squadron. And he did it at the exact moment before the Japanese could scatter or conceal their planes. After the war, Major Robert "Cowboy" Stout returned to California and lived a quiet, private life. He rarely spoke about what he had done over Peleliu. His children grew up knowing their father had served in the Pacific, but they didn't learn the full story until many years later. The Navy Cross he earned lay tucked away in a drawer, never hung or displayed. Friends described him as humble, modest, and uncomfortable with praise. When someone asked about the mission, he would shrug it off with a simple line. "I saw planes that needed destroying, so I destroyed them." To him, it wasn't heroism, just duty. But the truth was, very few pilots would have done the same. Most would have followed orders, radioed command, reported the target, and waited for authorization. That kind of procedure, while safe, would have given the Japanese time to hide, disperse, or launch their aircraft. Stout's decision to act immediately, to trust his own eyes and judgment, changed the course of the battle. His story remained largely unknown outside small circles of aviation historians until decades later, when researchers revisited old mission reports. When historians cross-referenced Stout's Navy Cross citation with Japanese operational records and wartime aerial photography, the full scale of his achievement came to light. One man, one Hellcat, 8 minutes, 40 aircraft destroyed, and potentially 1,000 lives saved. It became a textbook case of battlefield initiative, the power of individual judgment at the tactical level. Stout couldn't have known for certain that his gamble was right. He based his decision on instinct, training, and split-second assessment. Everything about the situation advised caution. Follow orders, report back, wait for higher command. But Stout understood that sometimes the person closest to the fight sees what the commanders miles away cannot. His willingness to act on his own observation, even when it meant disobeying, reflected a core military philosophy, the principle of commander's intent. The Navy hadn't specifically told him to attack, but they had tasked him with protecting the invasion fleet. By choosing to destroy the airfield, he fulfilled that mission's deeper purpose. The Navy recognized this distinction when it awarded him the Navy Cross instead of convening a court-martial. They understood that strict obedience might have led to disaster, but his boldness prevented one. Modern military academies still teach Stout's mission as a case study, not just in flying skill, but in leadership and tactical decision-making under pressure. Pilots learn that sometimes following orders to the letter means missing a fleeting opportunity that will never return. His attack is also remembered for its perfect prioritization. Stout didn't waste ammo trying to pick off planes one by one. He identified the field's greatest weakness, the exposed fuel drums, and struck them first. That single choice triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the entire base. One well-aimed burst did more than thousands of random rounds could have. His low, fast attack runs from multiple directions, minimized his exposure to anti-aircraft fire, and displayed extraordinary precision. It wasn't luck, it was calculation, training, and nerve. Stout's 8-minute assault remains one of the finest examples of tactical brilliance and individual initiative in aviation history. He studied the defenses, plotted his attack paths, and carried them out flawlessly despite the pounding his aircraft took. Most importantly, he knew when to quit. Once his ammunition was gone, he didn't linger to inspect the damage or hunt for more targets. He disengaged. The mission was complete, and staying longer would have been nothing but needless risk. Every one of those choices happened in split seconds, under enemy fire, with no chance for second-guessing. His training, instinct, and combat experience allowed him to make decisions instantly, and each one proved right. Robert Cowboy. Stout passed away in 2005 at the age of 89. Only then did his family begin sharing his story publicly, prompting military historians to document it before the details vanished with time. The original mission reports, reconnaissance photos, and Navy Cross citation all confirmed what had once sounded too incredible to be true. In the end, Stout's strike over Peleliu remains one of the most successful solo attacks in all of naval aviation. No other pilot in World War II destroyed so many enemy planes in a single mission. His 8 minutes of combat prevented what could have been a catastrophic air assault on the invasion fleet at Peleliu. The Marines who stormed those beaches never knew that a lone Navy pilot had broken orders to protect them. They still faced brutal fighting on that island of coral and caves, where every ridge and trench became a killing ground. But they did so without enemy aircraft tearing into their landing craft. Sometimes the greatest act of heroism isn't obedience, it's defiance. Not rebellion for its own sake, but the courage to act when strict procedure would lead to disaster. Stout understood this instinctively. When faced with a choice between doing what he was told and doing what was necessary, he chose the mission. He put purpose above protocol. His legacy endures in every tactical classroom where future pilots learn the balance between discipline and initiative, between caution and courage. His story teaches that sometimes the best course of action is the one nobody ordered, the one that only the person in the moment can see. The military learned from men like Stout that flexibility can win battles where rigid obedience cannot. So, the next time you find yourself in a moment where the rules say, wait, but reality screams, act, remember Major Robert Cowboy. Stout circling above that burning airfield in 1944, he knew what had to be done. He knew the cost if he was wrong. And he did it anyway, because hesitation would have cost far more.